Tonight you will fall asleep surrounded by stone. Not the warm kind, not brick or hearth, but damp, gray walls that echo every sound. A cough, a footstep, the creak of a wooden pail in the dark. Tonight you fall asleep in the year no one bothers to count. You are inside a castle, not as a noble, not as a guest, not even as a prisoner, though that might be kinder. You are a servant, or a cleaner, or a nothing, with hands and a name no one uses. The castle does not care. Above you, somewhere high and unreachable, nobles feast beneath colored banners and tapestries thick enough to drown in. They drink wine you've never tasted, and speak words you're not allowed to know. Below you, the castle breathes, in mildew and meat smoke, in the grumble of pigs and the slosh of chamber pots. You don't remember when you arrived. You don't know how long you still stay. But tonight, you belong here. You sleep on rushes that were last changed when the leaves were still green. You wear clothes that belong to someone else, perhaps someone dead. You eat what they leave behind. You listen for footsteps in the dark and hope they're not coming for you. And yet, even here you will sleep. Not soundly, not safely, but sleep all the same. Let the torches flicker. Let the stone remember what it said seen. Close your eyes now. The castle will not wait. You wake up beneath a ceiling that drips. It does not rain in the hall. Not truly, but the stone above you weeps. Anyway, cold droplets form in the cracks, and fall without warning. Sometimes they strike your cheek, sometimes your eyes. You've learned not to flinch. The water is always colder than you expect. You sleep on straw, not fresh, not clean, not even dry. It's old rushes layered over slats of warped wood, flattened by bodies that came before you, and bodies that still share the space. You don't know their names. You don't need to. They are just breathing shapes that twitch in the dark. There is no privacy, no walls, just a corner if you're lucky, just a blanket, if someone forgets to take it back. The blanket smells of smoke and mold and the body of the last person who held it through the frost. The chamber you sleep in is beneath the kitchen stairs, not because it's warm, but because no one important ever passes that way at night. No need to be seen, no need to explain why you exist. A rat watches you from a beam overhead, fat and glossy with eyes like black beads. You don't fear it. If it gets too close, you'll smack it with your boot. But it won't. It knows you're not food. Not yet. The air smells like grease and meat that has long since burned, like stale beer, like the cold rot of stone that has absorbed centuries of footsteps and never released a single one. You sleep curled into yourself, arms tucked, knees bent, like you're hiding something inside your ribs. Maybe warmth, maybe the idea of softness, maybe nothing at all. The others sleep too. Men, women, children, all scattered like leftover crumbs in a room no one sweeps. Some snore, some twitch. One hums in her sleep, just beneath her breath. It's a tune you almost recognize. Almost. You've never seen this room in daylight. It's always too early when you wake, and too dark when you return. You don't know what color the stone is, only that it feels wet, and colder than it should. There is no door, only a curtain, threadbare and stained, that flaps uselessly when someone stumbles in to piss or sob or steal. You've learned not to ask questions. You've learned to pretend you're asleep even when you're not. Above you, nobles rest in feather beds, wrapped in fur, in linen, in names. But names don't matter down here. Only silence. Only stillness. Only warmth, when you can find it. You dream of beds sometimes, real ones, with pillows, with corners, with someone's arms around you who doesn't expect anything in return. But you wake with a start, and the straw has shifted, and your back is wet again from the wall's sweat. Sometimes you wonder who built this place. What hands carved these stones? What lives bled between them? If they too dreamt of beds. You don't speak much in the sleeping room. No one does. Words feel too big here, too sharp. You whisper only when necessary, and you never say your own name, just in case someone wants it more than you do. You've seen a man Sep's name taken before. He fell asleep one night, and didn't wake up. Too thin, too cold, too forgotten. The next day someone else answered to it, wore his shoes, took his bowl. No one blinked. The name didn't resist. Names don't let Sept mean safety. Not here. Only motion does. Only obedience. Only waking up again and again and again, no matter how little sleep you had. The fire never reaches this room. It burns upstairs, in kitchens and chambers you aren't allowed to enter. You know it exists, only because sometimes if the wind shifts, you catch its scent, smoke and meat, and something that once resembled celebration. Down here, you keep warm with bodies, with friction, with layers, with breath. You haven't taken off your shirt in weeks. You're not even sure what your skin looks like anymore, just that it itches, just that it feels less like yours each day. Once someone spoke of blankets being given out for good behavior. You don't believe it. No one's ever seen it happen, but still you behave, just in case. There is no window. There is no view. Only the beam where the rat sits. Only the drip that keeps time. Only the straw that shifts when someone dies. And yet, you do sleep. Not well. Not deeply. But you sleep. Because your body has no choice. Because exhaustion is heavier than fear. Because your work begins before the rooster, and ends long after the stars. Sleep becomes a place. Not one of rest, but of pause. Of escape, however brief. You dream of things with texture, of soft hands, of warm bread, of a blanket that doesn't smell like mildew and skin. You wake with your teeth clenched, jaw sore from holding back hunger even in your sleep. Your fingers twitch. Your feet are numb, but your heart still beats. And that is all the castle requires of you. Not joy, not memory, not voice, just breath, just presence, just the quiet promise that you will rise again tomorrow. So you close your eyes, you shift your weight, you pull the damp blanket tighter, and you listen, to the drip, to the rat, to the breath of the nameless beside you. You are here. You are not warm. You are not safe. But you are here. And for now, that is enough. Sleep, now. The castle is still standing, and morning hasn't found you yet. You wake to the sound of a cough. Not a new one, the same one, from the same mouth. A man across the room who's been trying to die for 3 nights but can't seem to finish. You turn your head, you pull the blanket tighter, you try to pretend you're still asleep. But your shift has already begun. You sit up slowly, your back cracks, your neck stings, you stretch as little as possible. Too much motion this early makes your joints ache all day. The stone floor is damp, it always is. You swing your feet down and press your soles to it, not because you want to, but because you must. The cold rushes into your bones like a punishment for waking. Your clothes are where you left them, or maybe where someone else tossed them. It hardly matters. There are no cupboards here, no pegs, no closets, just a pile near your mat that smells unmistakably of you and everyone else who wore it before you. You pull the shirt over your head. It is stiff with old sweat, patched at the shoulder with a scrap of linen that used to be something else. The sleeves are uneven, the collar torn. But it is yours. For today, the tunic is wool. It scratches, it itches, it pulls at your skin in places that used to bleed. You tie it closed with a bit of twine you found 3 weeks ago and haven't let go of since. Your hose are worse. They sag at the knees, thin at the thighs, mended with clumsy stitches you made by candlelight after everyone else was already asleep. You wear them anyway. The air bites otherwise. Underneath, you wear nothing. You haven't set for months. There is no such thing as underclothes in your world. Just layers, just rags, just skin and whatever protects it from the world. Your shoes are heavy, hard, shaped like someone else's foot. They were handed to you by the steward without a word. You took them without a thank you. Gratitude is dangerous here. It makes people notice you, and notice is never good. The left shoe leaks when it rains. The right has a nail inside that pokes your heel when you walk too far. You've stuffed both with straw. You wore better clothes once. Or you think you did. But it's hard to remember now. The colors blur. The fabrics fade. You think you owned a red scarf once. You think it belonged to someone you loved before it belonged to you. But that was a different life. A different skin. You adjust your belt. Not leather. Just rope. Frayed at the ends. Tied twice because the knot slips otherwise. You keep a wooden spoon tucked into it. A lucky one. It's not really lucky, it's just not broken. Over it all, a cloak. Or what remains of one. Wool again, heavy when wet, too short to cover your knees, stained with something you hope was soup. You pull it tight and tie it shut with shaking fingers. The clasp broke last winter. You've never fixed it, you wouldn't know how. There are castle folk who wear velvet. You've seen them. At a distance. Gold thread on their sleeves, fur at their collars, rings on their fingers even when they sleep. They smell like almonds. You smell like meat drippings and damp straw. They have servants to undress them. You have a rat to chase from your shoe each morning. But even among servants there is rank. The steward wears brown, heavy, structured, with a hood. The cook wears a leather apron, dark with grease. The chambermaids wear long skirts and linen caps that no longer stay white, no matter how often they're boiled. You wear what fits. What hasn't torn. What hasn't been stolen. Buttons are rare. You haven't seen one in months. When they fall off, they're pocketed and traded like coins. Thread is treasure. Needles. Priceless. You guard yours like a weapon. You've sewn your tunic so many times it's more patch than cloth. The fabric never smells clean. You wash it when you can. In a bucket. In gray water already used for something else. You scrub it against stone, rinse it in the stream, hang it where the wind might reach it, but it never dries all the way, and the damp always finds your spine. Sometimes the fleas return before your sleeves are back on. You've stopped fighting them. The itching is just part of the day now. Once, someone in the scullery whispered that the castle laundry burned noble clothing rather than let it touch peasant garments. You believe it. You've never seen any of their robes in the washroom. You've never touched a velvet hem. And you never will. Their shoes are soft. Their underthings are real. Their sleeves don't smell like smoke and fear. But they don't know the names of their own clothes. You do. You've worn the same tunic for 38 days. You've counted. Not because you care, but because it's something you can control. A number. A thread. A small map of survival. You do not complain. Not aloud. When your clothes chafe, you endure. When your boots blister, you walk. When your shirt tears, you mend. Because if you fall behind, someone else will take them. And nakedness is not an option. Not in this castle. Not in this world. So you adjust the twine again. Pull your cloak tighter. Flex your fingers until they forget the cold. Then you step out into the corridor. Stone beneath your feet. Darkness ahead. Another day beginning. And for a moment, just a moment, you imagine a different weight on your shoulders. A fur mantle. A golden clasp. A tunic that fits. But then the cold creeps back in. And you remember who you are. And you move on. Because the castle does not wait. And you are already late. Sleep now if you can. Or later when the day is done. Your clothes will still be waiting. Just as worn. Just as yours. You feel the need before you dare admit it. Your stomach tightens. Your gut twists. You shift your weight from one foot to the other and pretend it isn't happening. Not yet. Not now. But it is. And there is no dignity in what comes next. To relieve yourself in a castle is not simple, not private, not clean, not kind. There is no chamber set aside for your comfort, only corners and holes and buckets and walls that don't echo because they've heard it all before. The nobles have garde-obis, carved stone seats with chutes that lead straight into the air, often over the outer wall. The waste falls into the moat, into the cold, onto rocks, onto whoever's unlucky enough to pass below. You are not allowed near them. You've been ordered to clean one once. The stink rose like a curse. Warm. Sweet. Ancient. A thickness in your throat. A buzzing in your ears. A sound like dripping that never stops. You scrubbed the floor with vinegar and herbs and old rags already soaked in worse things. You scrubbed until your hands bled. You were told to do it again the next day. But you don't get a chute. You don't get privacy. You get the privy. A wooden box built into the far wall of the servants' courtyard, behind the pig stalls, behind the midden, behind everything else the castle forgets. It leans. It moans. It smells before you even reach the door. There is says no lock. Only a hook made from a bent nail. Someone has carved their name into the door, or maybe just a word they wanted someone to remember. Inside it seeps worse. The air is thick, wet, still, a single hole cut into the plank. A bucket beneath it that hasn't been emptied since yesterday, or longer. You breathe through your mouth. You lift your tunic. You squat carefully. You do not look down. There are flies, always flies. They buzz in the corners, gathering around whatever warmth they can find. You do your business quickly, quietly. You hope nothing splashes. The first time you used it, you gagged. Now you just shiver. There is no paper. Of course not. You use straw, or moss, or a rag that someone hung on a peg and hasn't washed in weeks. Sometimes it's frozen, sometimes it's damp, sometimes you pretend it's clean. When you're done, you stand slowly. Your legs ache from the crouch. Your back protests. You adjust your clothes, tying knots you've untied 1,000 times. You open the door and breathe air that still stinks, but less. And for a moment, you remember that your body is not yours. It belongs to the castle, to the work, to the need. Your body is a tool, a vessel, a thing that functions until it fails. No one asks if you stir sick, if your bowels burn, if your stomach churns. You vomited behind the bakehouse last week and were given more bread to carry, not less. There is no mercy for digestion, only pace, only output. Only use. Some days, you don't go at all. You hold it. Tighten your stomach like a belt. Tell yourself you can wait. But the wait always ends the same way. In the dark. In the cold. In the place where flies whisper and shame drips from the walls. You've seen worse. You've seen a man lose control during work and soil himself. He laughed. And then he cried. You've seen a woman give birth near the privy. Her screams swallowed by the stink. The baby didn't live. She named it anyway. You've seen what happens when the bucket isn't emptied. You've emptied it yourself. You've carried it in both hands, arms locked, walking slowly across the courtyard so nothing sloshes. You've poured it into the trench behind the wall, watched it mix with rot and rain. You've slipped on it. You've tasted it. And still you wake. You dress. You go again, not because you stir brave, not because you stir strong, but because you must, because your body keeps working, and you have no choice but to follow. Once you passed a noble in the hall. He smelled like lavender. He smiled, barely, then moved on. Later you carried his chamber pot to the stream and scrubbed the inside until your reflection came back. You looked tired. You looked old. You looked like someone who no longer dreamt of lavender. There are men who say a clean privy is the mark of a well-run house. You think it's the mark of someone else doing the worst work in silence. And so when the time comes again, when the ache returns, low and dull and certain, you do not protest. You do not sigh. You just walk. You just open the door. You just become a body again. And when it's done, and the knot is tied, and the stink still clings, you lift your chin and return to work. Because that's what expected, and because no one else is coming to save you from the flies. Rest now, or try to. There are worse things than the cold, worse things than the dark. But for tonight, you stir clean enough. You never wake because you stir ready. You wake because of the bell. It tolls through stone, not loudly, but with authority. A deep, slow clang that reaches the marrow before it reaches the ears. It doesn't ring to greet the sun. It rings because someone decided it should. That's how mornings work here. The bell doesn't care if you stir cold, if you stir mid-dream, if your body has begun to ache in ways it didn't the day before. It simply rings, and expects motion. You sit up bleary and slow, like a corpse resisting resurrection. The others rise too, groaning quietly. No words are exchanged. No one says good morning. That would imply it might be one. You roll from your mat. Your feet find the stone. It's colder than it was last night. Or maybe your bones are thinner. The rushes stick to your skin in places. They leave impressions that won't fade for hours. The bell rings again. 2 strokes means firewood must be fetched. 3 means the courtyard must be swept. 4 is for the steward Seppus summons. This morning it rings 5 times. You do not know what 5 means. You shall find out soon enough. It one that be good. You throw on your cloak and tie your belt. The knot is stiff from sleep, from dried sweat, from days without enough motion to loosen it. Your hands tremble. Not from fear. From hunger. You haven't said eaten since yesterday. A heel of bread. A ladle of barley and water. Half a turnip, soft and pale and stringy. But you don't think of food yet. First comes the bell. It calls you before the rooster does. The rooster belongs to the kitchen anyway, and even he seems reluctant most mornings. You don't blame him. The hallway outside your sleeping chamber is dark. No candles lit yet, no torches. Only the faint shimmer of pale blue leaking through the high arrow slits in the stone. Morning, or something pretending to be it. Your feet move by habit. Left, right, around the barrel, past the steps that always groan. You know the path even blind. Down the narrow corridor, through the servants' set passage, into the outer hall where the wind seeps in under the doors and makes the straw scurry across the floor like mice. The others gather, shoulders hunched, eyes low, a half-dozen familiar faces, all too tired to meet your gaze. One boy sniffs. A woman pulls her shawl tighter and whispers a prayer, though not loud enough for the saints to bother listening. The steward appears. Wool coat. Red nose. A roll of parchment in one hand. Not because he can read it, but because it means he doesn't have to look at you. He calls names. Yours is instead among them. This is bad. Or good. It says, never clear. The named ones scatter, some to the stables, some to the kitchens, one to the tower, which means someone noble is sick, or worse. You wait. The steward frowns. Eyes you like a puddle he's considering stepping in. Then he grunts and jerks his thumb toward the stairs. Firewood, he says. North rooms. Move. You nod. You don't speak. Speaking makes things worse. The stairs are steep. Narrow. Worn in the center from generations of feet like yours. You climb them one at a time, carrying an empty basket in your arms, one that will soon be heavy with damp logs and moldy kindling. The bell has stopped ringing, but its rhythm lives in you now, a dull echo in your spine. It sets the pace. The day has begun. And you are no longer a person. You are motion. You are labor. You are the shape that makes the castle breathe. At the top of the stairs, a knight passes you. His boots are clean. His cloak brushed. His hair tied with a leather band you could sell for 3 months' bread. He doesn't look at you. Not because he sets cruel, but because you don't exist. To him, you are a shadow with arms. A tool with breath. Something the castle provides, like fire or wine or weather. You keep your eyes down, your hands tight on the basket. The corridor is longer than it was yesterday, or maybe your legs are shorter. Either way, the room at the end is cold. The fire dead, the logs wet. You gather them anyway. You splinter your fingers. You wince as the bark grates your palms, already raw from rope and salt and soap that never quite rinses clean. You carry the wood back, down the stairs, through the kitchen, into the chamber where the Lord's Son likes to watch things burn. You kneel. You stack. You do not speak. A servant boy stands beside you, younger, cleaner. He smirks when you catch his eye. He will not last. The fire crackles. The warmth stings your cheeks. You do not linger. Warmth is not yours to keep. You return the basket. You rinse your hands in a basin that smells of old wine and ash. You rub your palms dry on your cloak. You wait for the next bell. Because there will be another. There is always another. That seps what mornings are here. One sound after another chasing you through the hours like a wolf through snow. And you are the thing that runs. Not fast enough to escape. Just fast enough to survive. And when night comes, if it comes, you'll crawl back to your mat. And sleep. If the bell lets you, rest now. Or at least, pause. The day is only just begun. And already your hands are tired. The first thing you notice is the heat. It hits you before the smoke, before the smell, before the shouting. Heat like breath, thick and wet, pouring from the low archway that leads into the castle's kitchens. It clings to your skin like oil. It fogs your eyes. It makes your clothes feel like another layer of sweat. You duck your head and step inside. At first it's sex chaos. Then it's a kind of ritual. A dozen people moving in a space too small for half that number, meeting, stirring, spitting, arguing, carrying pots that threaten to tip and spill boiling broth on your feet, pushing trays into ovens, yanking bones from meat, scrubbing grime off the same tables that will be dirty again in minutes. No one stops moving. No one steps aside. The only rule is not to get in the way. You stir already in the way. A woman snaps at you to shut the door. A boy yells for more salt. A cook lumbers past with a haunch of something you don't recognize, flies still clinging to the skin. The castle eats well, or at least, the top of it does. In the great hall above, they'll dine on meats. You've only smelled venison, duck, pheasant, hare, roasted apples glazed in honey, stews made with almonds and saffron, bread that doesn't crumble when touched. You've seen it, carried it, watched it vanish through doors. You're not allowed to enter. What's left behind, when there's anything left at all, is what you get: gnawed bones, crumbs, fat scraped from the bottom of the pot. You stir, not bitter about it. Not anymore. Bitterness takes energy. Energy takes food. You can set waste either. Today you stir a sign to the root cellar. You carry a torch down a staircase slick with damp. The air grows cold fast. It smells of earth and old skin. Your foot slips on something soft. A rat, a cloth. You don't stop to check. The cellar is darker than night. Barrels of salted fish, sacks of turnips and onions stacked like corpses. Rows of hanging garlic twisted into loops that brush your hair when you pass. You grab what you're told. 5 sprouting potatoes, a carrot that looks like a gnarled toe, and a cabbage with more brown than green. You bring it all up. No thanks. Just a grunt. Back in the kitchen, you are ordered to peel. You take a knife. You crouch by the door. You peel without pause, letting the skins fall to your feet. Your fingers are numb from cold and then scalded from steam. Your knees ache. Your stomach growls, but no one hears it, or they pretend not to. There sets bread on the counter. Fresh, round, whole. You stare at it. A cook notices. He slaps your hand before it even moves. Not for you, he says. You nod. You weren't set going to take it. Not really. Only imagine it. You return to peeling. The castle eats for display. At feasts they build sugar sculptures of swans. They dye meat blue with flowers. They layer pies with hidden birds that fly out when sliced. You saw that once. The bird hit a window and died. They laughed. You swept it up. Sometimes, they leave half their meal untouched. They say the goose is dry, the wine is sour, the bread is too warm. You would eat the crumbs off the rushes. And you have. The cooks joke that they could poison a dozen nobles a day and no one would notice. They wouldn't. Not until it reached someone important. Not until a crown tilted. Not until someone with a name choked. You wonder if it's true. You wonder if anyone ever has. But that's dangerous thinking. You slice your finger. Not deeply. Just enough to sting. You put the knife down and suck the blood. It tastes of iron and salt and maybe something rotten underneath. Someone yells that the lard set's gone rancid. Someone else yells that it was always rancid. The air thickens. You stand. You move. You fetch more onions. You stir a pot until your arms shake. You carry a tray that burns your hands. You drop nothing. You are a machine that smells like meat and wood smoke. Eventually the food leaves the kitchen. Carried by pages in clean tunics. Carried on silver trays with carved handles. Carried through doors that never open for you. Silence returns. The fire burns lower. The cooks sit. One passes you a bowl. Not much. Gray stew. A crust of bread. A bit of bone with the memory of meat. You eat it gratefully. You don't speak. You let the heat settle in your belly, though it doesn't stay long. Afterward you scrub the floor. On hands and knees. Until the grease is gone or you are. And when they tell you you're done, you stand. You stretch. You leave. Not because you stir full, but because the kitchen has decided it is finished with you. What the castle eats is ceremony. What you eat is survival. And still, somehow, you keep moving. Rest now. Or try. There are more potatoes tomorrow, and fewer fingers. The stairs to the upper chambers are narrow, winding, and not made for people like you. They are made for the silent, for the unseen, for the servants and pages and quiet things that carry firewood, wine, and waste. They curve like a spine trying to stand upright, and never quite managing. The stones are worn smooth from centuries of climbing, but not worn kindly. Each step is a threat. Slip, and your skull might be the next echo in the stone. You stir sent up with a pail. You stir not told what S is in it. You stir not supposed to ask. The smell is answer enough. It leaks as you walk, warmth trickling down your wrist, staining the side of your dress. You ignore it. You've carried worse. The human body can hold a surprising amount of bile, but not for long. At the top, a door, closed. Not yours to open without knocking. Not a proper knock, just 2 fingers quick against the wood like rain. A pause. A voice from inside. Leave it. You do. The door doesn't set open. No one thanks you. You descend. Halfway down, another command. The lady's room. Her sheets. A message passed in whispers. The sheets must be changed. The message must not be spoken aloud. You take both without reply. That is the job. To carry what no one wants to admit. Her room smells of rosewater and old blood. The window is open, letting in more cold than air. You step around the silks, the perfumes, the polished mirror. No one can afford to gaze into too long. She doesn't look at you. She's staring at the wall. You don't blame her. The sheets are damp. You don't ask why. You take them. You do not fold them. You stuff them into the basket and press them down. She speaks, barely. Tell him I said bled again. You don't know who him is. You nod anyway. It's so's not your place to interpret blood. The chamber door shuts behind you like a mouth closing. You do not look back. You descend again. This is what it means to live below. To carry the things no one else wants to name. To know the stains before the stories. To see the lords and ladies not as legends, but as laundry and leftovers and locked doors. You've seen the nobleman with the twisted foot drag it behind him like a secret. You've heard the steward weep behind the tapestry when he thought no one was awake. You've poured wine for a lord who pinched your arm so hard you bled for 2 days. And you did nothing. Because there is nothing to do. They are the ones with names. You are the one who listens. And if you speak of what you hear, the arguments, the cries at night, the sharp words from father to son, you won't be punished. You so simply disappear. The castle has many ways of forgetting you. The river, the well, the wall behind the stables where moss grows thick and the rats dig deep. And so you don't speak, not of the lord who watches too long, not of the knight whose bruises come from no battle, not of the child whose cradle hasn't rocked in a week. You carry trays. You carry blankets. You carry secrets like bricks on your back. Sometimes you think you could write a book, if you knew how to write, a book full of things never meant to be read. But then you remember, ink is expensive, and books burn quickly. The lords above you know your footsteps by sound. They know the rattle of your key, the creak of the floorboard, the rustle of your apron, but they do not know your name. To them you are the girl, the boy, the one with the limp, the quiet one. That seps your whole biography. And yet, you know them. By scent. By sorrow. By the way their chamber doors close a little harder each year. You once saw the old baron, drunk and weeping, clutching a piece of parchment as if it could reverse time. You once heard the young daughter praying not for salvation, but for silence. You once caught a glimpse of the eldest son standing barefoot in the snow, eyes unfocused, as if hoping the cold would decide something for him. You turned away. You always turn away. That sep's what keeps you safe. And yet, sometimes, in the darkest corner of your bunk, you wonder what it might feel like to be seen. Not watched, not used, not passed by, but seen. The way the fire sees the wood before it burns. The way the sky sees the sea. You carry a new tray now, bread, wine, and dried cherries. For the guests, you'll deliver it through the side passage, through the servant's slit that barely qualifies as a door. You'll hear the laughter. You'll smell the smoke. You'll feel the warmth on your cheek, though it won't belong to you. You shall turn. You shall descend. And no one will remember your face. But the walls will. The stone sees everything. And sometimes, late at night, you imagine the castle knows your name, and keeps it safe, tucked between its mortar and moss. That is enough. Rest now. You have served those above you. And tomorrow they will still not remember. But the stone will. And you will still be here. The air changes before you even reach it. You know you're getting close because the breeze shifts, no longer the cold kiss of the castle's high windows but something warmer, fouler, a wind that carries memory. Not yours. Not entirely, but memory just the same. You follow the corridor, narrow and damp. The stones underfoot are slick with old moss and older things. There's a torch bracketed to the wall, but no one's lit it. No one wants to see this clearly. You are heading to the garderobe. A word too pretty for what it means. You used to think it sounded like a room where one might find cloaks, or clean linen, or even a quiet prayer. You were wrong. Everyone is wrong the first time. The door is warped wood too short for you to pass under without bending. The handle is damp. Of course it is. Inside the air thickens. Warm, wet, private in all the worst ways. The seat is a plank, split with age, worn smooth by bodies you'll never name. There's a hole in the middle, a dark pit that plunges downward, vanishing into the castle's bowels. Sometimes, when the light hits just right, you can see it glisten. Sometimes you hear things shifting far below, a drop, a squelch, a rat's quiet dinner. You don't look down. The smell is always new and always the same, a churned mix of earth and rot and yesterday's stew of illness and haste and the shame people try not to feel. But you feel it. You are here because someone else left something behind. There is no paper, of course. Just straw, leaves if you're lucky, moss if someone bothered, a cloth rag if you have something worth trading. You hold your breath and do what you must. The draft curls beneath you like a ghost. The garderobe is built into the outer wall of the castle, a clever bit of medieval engineering. Waste drops down through a vertical shaft and out into the open air or into a cesspit below, where it festers and ferments like a memory no one can scrub clean. If the wind is strong enough, it comes right back up. You've had your hair blown upward by the force of it. You've seen nobles retch from the smell and demand that someone fix it, as if smell can be mended like a torn sleeve. As if decay obeys titles. You don't feel rich anymore. You've built a wall inside your nose, a second skin behind your eyes. You step in, you squat, you rise, you step out, like a ghost passing through its own death. When you clean the castle, and you always clean the castle, this is the part you rush, not because of the smell but because of the stories. They say someone once fell in. They say someone else was thrown in. They say if you lean too far, the castle decides you've seen too much. You believe all of it. The hole is wide enough for a child, narrow enough to catch a boot, deep enough to forget someone ever lived. You've seen the flies. You've heard the things that flutter down there that do not sound like wings. Sometimes you carry a bucket of lime, sometimes just a prayer. On feast days, the nobles drink too much. The garderobes fill fast. The walls echo with groans, splashes, curses. Someone once used a goblet. You had to clean it. One of the guards joked that you should bottle the smell and send it to the king. You didn't set laugh. Your hands were inside the pit. It sets not just filth you find. There are secrets here. A ring once, gold, knotted with green stone. No one came looking for it. A scroll partially unrolled, stained but legible, names you didn't recognize. Spells maybe, or poetry. You burned it. You didn't want to know. A rat skull with human teeth inside it. Or maybe your mind made that part up. You stopped asking questions. In the winter, the hole steams. In the summer it blooms. You envy the lords their chamber pots, though someone still has to empty them. Sometimes that someone is you. You've carried porcelain bowls still warm with the urgency of last night's wine. You've scrubbed out shapes that should not exist. You've rinsed with water you later used to wash your own hands, because water is scarce, and dignity costs more than you earn. And yet it is here, in this chamber, with its stink and stain, that you are most human. You remember your body. You remember its limits. You remember that, under all the silks and armor and candles and prayers, everyone comes here. Everyone. The knight, with perfect teeth. The lady with the prayer book. The cook who laughs too loudly. The lord who thinks he seps a god. They all crouch. They all grunt. They all leave something behind. And you clean it. That is the shape of your world. You take a rag. You wipe the seat. You toss the rag out the slit in the wall, where it flutters downward like a sad little flag of surrender. You leave the chamber and breathe through your mouth. It doesn't stead help. But you pretend. You always pretend. Back in the corridor, someone passes you. They wrinkle their nose. Smells like hell, they say. You say nothing. Because hell at least is fire. This is something colder. More familiar. This is the smell of what the castle cannot hide. You walk on. The scent follows, clinging to your sleeves. You don't care anymore. Because at least, down there, no one looks at you. And that is a kind of peace. Rest now. You've done the worst of it. Until tomorrow. There is a place inside the castle where no one walks unless they must. It isn't on the grand tour given to visiting barons, no minstrels sing of it, no priest has ever blessed it, and yet, it runs through everything, a second skeleton inside the stone. You've found it by accident. Or maybe it found you. The corridor ends too early. The wall is uneven, cold even for this place. You press your fingers against the mortar. It doesn't push back. It gives. A draft kisses your skin. It smells like damp straw and something older, like teeth, if teeth had memory. You push. The stones shift just enough, and behind them, blackness. Not shadow. Not a room. A gap. This is not a passage for walking. It's for slithering, for crouching, for becoming less than human. You go in anyway. Because that's what survival looks like. You've learned the castle doesn't care about your shape, only your silence. The space is narrow enough to make your shoulders ache. You keep your arms tucked in. The floor is hard-packed earth, but your hands sink a little as you crawl. There are places where something once scratched at the walls. Not mice, not rats. Something bigger. You don't ask what. As you move forward, the castle changes. You begin to hear things you shouldn't said. The dining hall is above you. You hear the scrape of silver on pewter, the sound of someone coughing, not dainty, but deep and wet and full of dread. Further on, the chapel, soft words, a sob caught too late. Then the nursery. You stop. There hasn't been a child in that room for years, and yet something is rocking. You keep going. These walls have held breath, blood, secrets. The air is full of things unspoken. Someone once died here, you think, not in battle, not in glory, just quietly, slowly, with no one to hold their hand. There is a niche ahead, a hollow in the wall. You find a doll, cloth, wrapped, eyeless, damp. Its arms have been chewed through. You place it gently back where you found it. There is another sound now, not from above, not from outside. From beside you. A scuttle, a low dragging noise, not hurried, not afraid. Whatever it is, it knows you one set fight. You freeze. The sound pauses. You count heartbeats. Then it continues, away from you, not out of mercy, out of disinterest. You exhale. You move on. There are messages scratched into the stone with something sharp. Some in words, others in shapes. You read none of them. You've learned that some messages are meant only for the dead. You crawl until you find a crack that lets you see into the Lord's chamber. You do not look. Not because you're kind, but because the truth is heavy and you already carry enough. You know others have used this space before you, some still do. A servant who disappeared. A cook's boy who whispered things in the night. A girl with one shoe and blood under her nails. They are gone now. But they left their breath in the walls. It coats the stone like lichen, and you breathe it in. You emerge near the armory, a loose grate beneath a bench no one sits on. You are covered in dust, and cobwebs cling to your hair like small regrets. You brush yourself off. No one sees you. No one asks where you've been. You carry on. The wall has taken something from you. A little warmth, a little weight, a little time, but it has also given something back. Understanding of what the castle really is. Not just a fortress, not just a home, but a memory palace of the unloved. You hear a whisper in your mind, and you don't know if it's yours. They built it high to keep out the wolves, but the wolves were already inside. You light a candle that no one asked for, place it in the chapel, say nothing, just let it burn. There are things in the walls. You are one of them, and no one knows you better. Rest, now. Let the dark curl around you like a forgotten map. Let the stone remember your weight. Use earned a breath. Tomorrow, the castle may need to forget again. But for now it holds you close. The fire makes a sound like safety. Soft, snapping, wood exhaling its final breath, a rhythm that mimics comfort, even if the heat never truly reaches you, even if the flames are more for watching than for warming. You sit near it but not too near. This is not your fire. You didn't build it. You won't feed it. You're simply allowed to look. The hearth is large, built into the stone wall like a shallow cave. Its edges are blackened with decades of soot, and bits of bone still cling to the ashes, mistaken for bark or splinters or forgotten food. But you know what burns slowly, what doesn't flake right. Someone left the spit turning too long last week. You heard the shrieks, not from the meat, from the cook. Meat doesn't get to scream. You stretch your hands toward the warmth. The heat fades inches from your skin. It sits cold again, just like yesterday. The nobles sit closest, of course, their boots steaming slightly, their cloaks hung nearby to catch the fire's glow. They complain of the chill, even as they roast their faces red. You are allowed to warm your hands only when someone remembers you're there. You've learned to pretend you're not cold, that your fingers aren't stiff, that your nose hasn't gone numb. Sometimes you hold a tin mug, not for the drink, which is long gone, but to let the illusion of heat linger a little longer in your palms. Illusions are all the fire gives you. It sets not that there isn't setst enough wood. There's plenty, stacked high in the alcoves, guarded like treasure, stolen from peasants who now burn dung instead. But the fire is a statement, a signal of power. They burn just enough to show that they can burn, not enough to share. When the Baron walks in, they add another log. When you walk in, they don't even notice. Once you tried to sneak a coal back to your corner. You wrapped it in cloth, held it in your sleeve like a secret. It burned a hole through your shirt before you made it halfway. You still have the scar. You still wear the shirt. The fire laughs behind your back, even when no one is speaking. It mocks your breath, always visible, always curling like smoke from a candle that's already gone out. The tapestries don't help. They hang like warm illusions, scenes of hunts and saints and victories no one remembers. They're meant to trap the heat, but mostly they trap dust and moths and the scent of things gone wrong. You've considered crawling behind one just to see if it's warmer there. You never do. Not since you saw the girl with the burned foot. She had tried to sleep too close. Her heel sank into a coal. She didn't scream, just looked down as if surprised her flesh was soft enough to melt. You still see her sometimes, limping. She pretends it doesn't hurt. Everyone is pretending something. The guards pretend they saber alert. The nobles pretend they stir kind. The priest pretends the fire means divine presence. You pretend you sir not tired. The fire watches it all, crackling, humming. It never looks away. You remember when you used to stare into flames and see pictures, horses, ships, faces, as if the fire were telling you something. Now all you see is hunger, a need to consume, to reduce everything, wood, cloth, names, into ash. Sometimes in the middle of the night, you pass the hearth and see it still smoldering, embers glowing like eyes. You whisper to it, just to see if it whispers back. It never does. But you think it listens. One day it will forget what is allowed to burn and what is not. And that will be the warmest day of your life. For now you sit far from the hearth. The cold creeps in through the floor, through your shoes, into your bones. Your breath fogs again. The fire dances in someone else's eyes. You rub your hands together, not because it helps, but because it feels like doing something. Maybe tomorrow you'll find an excuse to clean the hearth, just to feel the heat on your face without being told to leave. Or maybe you'll stay cold, just to prove you still can. Because being numb is safer than asking for warmth. The fire is not for you, but you are not entirely for the cold either. You live between a flicker, a shiver, a maybe. Rest now. Let the flames crackle for someone else. Let your skin remember warmth, even if only as a rumor. You've made it through another night. And tomorrow the fire will still pretend. The bell rings 3 times. That means meat, maybe, or something like it. Maybe a bone with the memory of meat still clinging to it. Maybe not even that. You follow the others down the corridor. No one speaks. No one expects joy. Only rhythm. Only routine. If you fall out of step, you lose your place. And if you lose your place, you might not eat. The hall is dim. Candles burn low, their wax slumping like tired shoulders. The long table is already set. Wood splintered with time, stained with years of hunger. The same bowls. The same dull knives. The same chipped mugs, filled with the same thing that isn't quite beer and isn't quite water. You sit where you sit were allowed. You don't sit, look up. The nobles are already eating. Above at the raised dais, their laughter sounds forced, like it's trying to outpace the rot. They chew loud. Their teeth clack like hooves. Meat falls from their mouths, and they don't bother to catch it. You're served last, by someone who doesn't look at you. A wooden ladle slaps your bowl. A gray stew sloshes in. You hope it's rabbit. You pray it's not rat. You don't ask. There are things floating in the broth. Roots, maybe, or skin. You find something with a bone. You gnaw without tasting. It is warm. That is the kindest thing you can say. The bread is hard. You suck on it first. Like a child with a tooth coming in. It softens. Eventually, you eat quickly, not out of greed, out of caution. You've seen what happens when food goes untouched too long. A hand slips in, not always your own. You glance at the person across from you. You don't know their name. You think they used to talk once. Now they chew with eyes that never blink. Their bowl is always scraped clean, even when it isn't. There is a woman at the far end who eats like she's apologizing. She wipes her mouth with her sleeve after every bite. She weeps when she swallows. No one asks why. The dogs get scraps. You don't sit. The dogs are allowed to bark. You stir not. The fire flickers nearby. It doesn't warm you. Again. A noble drops a hunk of dripping meat on the floor. A dog leaps for it. You almost do too, but you stay seated, because the lash is worse than hunger, and you've already seen your share of lashes this week. A boy vomits behind you. Thin bile. He keeps eating afterward. No one stops him. There is a smell beneath the food. Mildew, old blood, wet wool. You breathe through your mouth. It doesn't help. Someone tries to sing a song. A servant, young, braver than wise. His voice cracks on the second line. A wooden spoon flies from the dais and hits him in the eye. He doesn't sing again. You chew slower. You remember last winter, when they ran out of flour, when the rats vanished, when the stew was thinner than water, and every bowl tasted like boiled cloth. You think of the one who didn't make it, the girl who always saved half her food for someone else, until there was nothing left to save. She stopped waking up one morning. Her bowl was still beside her, full of untouched kindness. They said a prayer. Then they took her bread. You keep chewing. The food fills the silence. Or maybe the silence fills the food. You're not sure anymore. There's a bone in your mouth now. You don't remember putting it there. You crack it open gently with your teeth. The marrow is bitter, but it's something. You have learned to love bitterness. It stays longer than sweetness. The nobles laugh again. One throws a drumstick at the wall. It leaves a grease stain shaped like a continent. No one will ever visit. You close your eyes for a moment. Just a blink. Just a second. You imagine a real meal. Warm bread, honey, fruit not dried or rotted, cheese that doesn't smell like feet and despair. You imagine someone handing you a plate and saying your name like it means something. You open your eyes. Your bowl is empty. You don't remember finishing. You lick it clean anyway. Someone coughs. Hard. Wet. A fleck of blood lands in their soup. They stir it back in. You feel nothing. When the bell rings again, it's time to leave. No words, no thanks, no satisfaction. Just standing, scraping benches, avoiding eyes. You walk back to your corner. Your belly aches, not from fullness but from the sudden absence of fear. You lie down. The stew still lingers on your tongue. So does the marrow. So does the memory of bread that never came. And the fire still burns. Somewhere, but not for you. Rest now. Let the ache fade with the light. Let your body forget what it means to want. You have eaten, and that is enough. For now. You wake in the middle of the night, and you don't know why. There is no sound, no scream, no thunder, just the familiar hush of heavy walls and colder air. You open your eyes and stare at the beams above you, thick wood darkened by centuries, bowing slightly with age. You count the cracks, the same ones as yesterday, the same as tomorrow, the same as always. You're afraid to move, not because of pain, you're used to pain, but because of what movement brings. Awareness, memory, hunger, need. Better to lie still, better to pretend, but you shift anyway. Your blanket is a folded bit of sacking that smells like mildew and burnt grease. Your tunic sticks to your skin, sweat maybe, or the stew from earlier. You can't tell. You don't want to know. The cold is patient. It waits for you to acknowledge it. Then it presses close into your ribs, your knees, your teeth. You try to sleep again, but the thoughts come. Not loud. No, they whisper. They always whisper. You think of bread, real bread, with a golden crust and a soft inside that steams when you tear it open. You imagine dipping it into broth that's thick, rich, spiced like something from a merchant's dream. You imagine licking your fingers clean. And then you punish yourself for imagining. Because wanting is dangerous. Desire makes you visible, and visibility makes you a target. The castle doesn't set like when you want things. It wants you to serve, to survive, to disappear, but not to yearn. Once you stared too long at a bolt of blue cloth in the storeroom, not even touching, just looking, just admiring, just wondering what it might feel like against your skin. A steward saw you. You scrubbed latrines for a month. They told you it was a lesson in humility. You learned something else, that beauty is not for you. Not here. Not now. Not ever. You remember a dream you had when you were small, a hallway of doors. One of them had your name on it. Inside was a warm bed, a full plate, a voice that said you mattered. You've stopped dreaming that one, or maybe you've just stopped naming it. You try to think of something safe, something allowed. Work, tasks, duties. Tomorrow you'll carry buckets, scrub floors, mend ropes, hold your tongue, bow your head. These are the thoughts that earn you nothing, but at least they don't cost you anything either. You turn onto your side. The straw rustles beneath you, stiff and unforgiving. You scratch at your neck. Something bites. Probably a flea. Maybe a louse. You've stopped keeping count. Someone sighs nearby. You're not alone in this room, though it often feels that way. Others lie beside you, behind you, under the same roof. But you don't speak to them. Not now. Not here. Too many ears. Too little trust. You used to want a friend, someone to share food with, or secrets, or even just warmth. But that too was a desire, and desire betrays. The last person you really spoke to, is gone now. They tried to leave, to escape, or so they say. No one talks about them anymore. The space they left behind is like a shadow, always present, never named. So now when you feel words rising in your throat, you swallow them. Even your tears are silent. You wonder if the nobles want things too. They must, right? Everyone wants. But maybe they want from excess, not from lack. They want fancier wine, softer pillows, more applause. Not bread, not safety, not a name spoken kindly. You close your eyes. You pretend your hands are cleaner than they are. You pretend your name means something. You pretend someone will touch your shoulder tomorrow and say, "Thank you." And then you feel the shame rise again. Because wanting thanks is vanity. Because imagining comfort is foolishness. Because hope is not a candle, it saps a fever. And if you let it grow, it will eat you from the inside out. So you do what you always do. You lie still. You breathe in the stone and straw and dark. You listen to the wind slip through cracks in the castle wall. You try to believe in nothing, because nothing can be taken from you. But still, beneath it all, something lingers. A wish. Not loud, not bold, just a thread. Thin, fraying, invisible. It curls around your breath and waits. And maybe one day you will forget it entirely. But not tonight. Tonight it hums softly in your chest, like a lullaby half remembered. And even though you're afraid of it, you do not let it go. Not yet. Rest now. The want will sleep with you. Gentle, like a knife placed carefully beside the heart. Not to harm, just to remind. You stir still human. Even here. You wake again. You're not sure how long you've slept. Minutes, maybe, or hours, or just long enough to remember where you are, and where you're not. The air hasn't changed. It still smells of damp linen, old fire and skin that hasn't known soap in weeks. Your breath is quiet but not enough. You hear it bounce back at you from the stone. You sit up slowly, carefully, because you don't want the walls to hear too much. It's a silly thought, or it would be if you lived anywhere else. But in a medieval castle the walls have a memory. The stone remembers footsteps. It knows the pattern of your gait. It knows when you're dragging your left foot from yesterday's blister. It knows when you're sneaking, even when you think you're clever. It remembers the voices of every servant who ever swore under their breath. It remembers screams. Some places echo more than others. The western corridor, the staircase to the cellar, the long hall that leads to the chapel, especially that one. You've learned which stones speak louder. You've learned which floorboards keep secrets. Tonight, you don't light a candle. You've seen what happens to those who light candles at night. It's not forbidden, technically, but nothing needs to be forbidden here to be punished. You run your hand along the wall as you rise. Cold. It's always cold, but it's not just temperature, it's intention. This cold feels like it wants you gone. The corridor outside is darker than before. You take a few steps. The floor doesn't creak, not yet. You're careful, you always are. You whisper to yourself. Not words, just sound, just something to remind your ears you exist. Because otherwise the silence becomes too much. Because otherwise the silence becomes someone else. A breeze finds its way through the stone and brushes your ankle. The castle breathes. You pass the old door with the iron latch, the one that leads nowhere now. They say it used to go to the old pantry, before the fire, before the rats, before the girl who disappeared inside and was never found. No one opens that door anymore. But sometimes it creaks, on its own. You keep walking. You think of the cook who used to whistle when she worked, every morning without fail, until she didn't, until someone said she was caught stealing a crust of bread, a bit of cheese. No one saw her after that. But the hall she worked in still hums faintly, like her whistle got trapped in the stone. Like it doesn't set no she set's gone. You think of the boy who cried in the stables every night, not loudly, just soft hiccuping sobs that made you want to cover your ears. He said the walls were talking to him. Everyone laughed, until he jumped into the moat. You didn't laugh. And now the stall where he used to sleep always smells like wet wool, even in summer. The castle doesn't forget. You pause at a window slit. The moon stares through like an unblinking eye, pale too far to offer warmth. You place your hand on the sill. The stone there is smoother, worn down by years of servants leaning out, gasping for air they couldn't find indoors. You've done it too. Sometimes you wonder how many hands have touched the same place you're touching now. How many prayers whispered into the wind. How many goodbyes. You hear a sound behind you. Not a voice, not a footstep. Just an adjustment, the kind the castle makes when it's settling in, or when it's waking up. You don't turn around. You've learned that lesson. Some things want to be looked at, others want to look through you. You walk on. There's a patch of moss growing near the servants' stairwell. It glows faintly in the dark. Not magic, just moonshine and rot, but it feels like magic when you're this tired. You touch it anyway. It's soft, wetter than you expected. You wonder if the moss knows things too. You think about the word haunted. It doesn't feel right here. Ghosts would be a kindness. Ghosts have stories. Ghosts mean someone remembers you. This is something else. This is a place that erases. The nobles' quarters are above. You hear something. Not laughter, not this late, more like pacing. A creak of boots, a snatch of muttered words. Someone upset, or pretending to be upset. You listen, then you stop, because the wall is listening too. You walk faster, past the storeroom, past the laundry, past the place where the rats are bold. You don't know where you're going anymore, you just don't want to be still. Stillness invites memory, stillness lets the stone lean in. You end up back where you started. The rushes on the floor are even more scattered now. Someone rolled in their sleep, or thrashed, or was pulled. You don't ask. You lie back down. You turn to the wall. You speak into it, quietly. You say, please forget me. You say, please don't remember where I go when I sleep. You say, please don't whisper my secrets back to me. The wall is cool. The wall says nothing, but it does not forget. And you sleep anyway. Because you must. Because morning will come, and the fire will crackle, and someone will call your name, or something like it, and you will rise, and pretend you are whole, and the wall will be waiting. Just as it always has, just as it always will. Rest now. The castle is watching. But tonight, it lets you close your eyes. Not out of mercy, but out of habit. It happens after the bread, after the beetle you almost bit through, after the ache in your jaw from chewing too long on something that no longer qualifies as food. You are sweeping a hall, one of the smaller ones, tucked near the servant's wing. It's not often used, which means it's always cold. Cold enough to make your fingers stiff around the broom handle. Cold enough that your breath still curls like ghost smoke in the early hours. You're not thinking. That step's safer. Just the scrape of straw bristles against uneven stone. Back and forth. Back and forth. You let the rhythm dull your mind. It's almost like a prayer if you squint at it sideways. And then, footsteps. Not servant steps. Not that tired, apologetic shuffle you've come to know. No, these are crisp, purposeful, echoing before they even arrive. You straighten, you don't mean to, but your spine obeys instinct. The noble enters. Not a lord, not the king, just one of them. You don't even know his name. Maybe no one does. Maybe that's part of the power. He's dressed simply, not in furs, not in gilded fabrics, but his simplicity costs more than your entire life. Wool dyed deep green, clean, fitted, no sweat stains, no missing threads. His boots are polished, leather so fine it shines even in shadow. He does not look at you, not at first. You keep sweeping, because what else can you do? Then, too soon, too sharply, he stops. You feel it in your bones before you see it. The halt, the attention, the shift in temperature, a moment that stiffens the air like held breath. You raise your eyes, just barely, just enough. And there it is. The smile. It sets not warm. It does not cruel either. It sets worse. It's curious. Like he's found a strange object and is trying to decide whether it's useful, or breakable, or both. Working hard, he says. You freeze. It's not a question, though it sounds like one. It's a trick. You know this game. If you answer too eagerly, you sir mocking him. If you answer too slow, you sir lazy. If you don't do an answer at all, you are insolent. You nod, slightly, just enough. He takes a step closer. The smile doesn't move, but his eyes do. They trail over your tunic, your hands, the dirt under your fingernails, the way your feet turn slightly inward, a habit you can't break. You've got a smudge, he says, and reaches forward. You flinch before you can stop yourself. His fingers brush your cheek. It's not a caress. It's not violent either. It's possession. Like he's reminding you that you are made of nothing he cannot touch. He wipes something off, or pretends to, and lets his hand fall. You don't breathe. He studies you a moment longer. Then, finally, he turns. Walks away. As he passes, he says, "Keep it up." The hall steps, looking better already. You hear the grin in his voice. You don't move until the sound of his boots fades. Then you kneel, not in reverence, in survival. Your legs once that hold you. You kneel and you grip the broom like a weapon you're not allowed to use. You stare at the floor he complimented, and you scrub it harder than before, even though it sits clean, even though it never mattered, even though no one else will notice, because now the noble has looked, and smiled, and spoken, and that changes everything. You are visible now, and visibility is a terrible thing. Later that day you're called to the kitchens. You carry 2 buckets of water from the well, each one heavier than memory. Your shoulder burns. You welcome it. Pain feels honest. The cook eyes you differently. Not suspicion, not kindness, just a flicker. She's seen too much to care deeply, but she's noticed. You've been marked. Not with blood, not with ink, just a glance, just a smile, and that sep's enough. That night when you try to sleep you feel it still, the trace of his fingers, the ghost of his voice. You try not to imagine what it meant. You try not to imagine what comes next. You try not to remember the last servant who was seen smiling back. You try not to recall how she was moved to a different wing, how she never returned. You tell yourself you sir nothing, that sip's safer, but deep down some dangerous part of you knows. You are not nothing now. You've been smiled at, and smiles are not gifts. They are invitations. They are warnings. They are doors that only open one way. So you lie on your straw-stuffed mat, you press your hand to your cheek, you breathe, and you wait, because the noble will return. They always do, and they never smile for free. Rest now. Tonight you stare just a servant again, but you may not be tomorrow, and the castle is already changing its shape around you. You wake before the bell, but that means nothing. You do not own your time here. The cold hits first, not a sharp bite, but a creeping seep, the kind that coils up from the floor and sinks into your joints, into your breath, into your bones. You roll from the mat without thinking. That's the trick really, to move before your thoughts catch up, because thoughts ask questions, and in this place, questions are a luxury. You stand, you dress. You do not stretch. You do not sigh. You make no sound. There is a word no one says aloud, but everyone knows it. Displeasure. It hangs in the castle like a draft. It has no face, no rules. It's not attached to a law or a god or a crime. It simply arrives. And when it does, it brings the whip. The master-at-arms wears a hood. You've never seen his full face, just the mouth, dry-lipped and unsmiling, and the hands, always gloved, always ready. You don't know if he has a name. No one uses it. He is not cruel. That would almost be easier. He is indifferent. And that is worse. You scrub a step wrong. You forget to bow low enough. You walk too fast. You walk too slow. You are seen. You are unseen. You are breathing. Too loudly. Too quietly. None of it matters. Not when the whip wants to be used. You learned early how to read the silence of the halls, when it tenses, when it watches, when it smells punishment on the air like burnt meat. The lash doesn't crack at first. It whispers. You've heard it sing through air just before it lands. You've heard it bite a boy's shoulder clean through the tunic, leaving a wet bloom of red the size of a handprint. The boy hadn't done anything, but the noble who passed him had tripped on his own hem, and someone had to carry the shame. Someone had to bleed so the noble wouldn't have to feel embarrassed. That is what the whip is for. It isn't stop justice. It sets translation. It turns accidents into warnings. It turns glances into confessions. It turns silence into guilt. You see the stable girl again today. She's limping, not obviously, just a stiffness in the way she kneels to fill the trough. You say nothing. She says less. You both know better. You saw the blood last week, a punishment for spoiled meat. She didn't cook it, didn't serve it, but she was near it. Nearness is enough. The master-at-arms stands by the archway. He doesn't move. He doesn't need to. His presence is punctuation. His shadow finishes sentences no one dares speak. You keep your eyes on the floor. You scrub the table legs with vinegar and old cloth. You pray the rag doesn't set tear. You pray a splinter doesn't fly into your eye. You pray that nothing happens, because even an accident is too much. You overheard a whisper once, a cook muttering to herself after too much ale. She said the whip isn't there to correct you, it's there to remind you. Of what? Of everything you stir not allowed to forget. Your place, your role, your invisibility. You saw her flogged 2 days later. Not for the whisper. For lateness. Even though she was early. But the whip had been idle. And idleness is dangerous. At night, your back itches. Not from insects, not from rash. From memory. You've only been lashed twice. Once when you dropped a platter. Once when you looked up too long during prayer. You've forgotten the pain, mostly. But your skin has het. It flinches when the wind moves wrong. It stiffens when leather creaks. The worst part is not the whip itself. It saps the moment before. The pause. The breath. The waiting. Not knowing if it will come or if someone else will take it for you. Not knowing if this is the day your body will forget how to pretend. Not knowing if you will scream. Because screaming makes it worse. The ones who cry out get remembered. And memory in this place is a punishment all its own. So you learn to hold it in. To bury the shout in your throat like a bone in dry earth. To wear silence like armor. To offer no resistance and no plea. The castle loves quiet pain. It eats it like bread. You return to your mat that night, with the same number of wounds as the day began. You call it mercy. You shouldn't stee, but you do, because gratitude keeps you soft. And soft things don't break as loudly. You lie on your side. The bruises on your ribs from last week have faded to green. You trace them lightly. A map of reminders. A cartography of obedience. The castle does not hate you. It simply doesn't set care. But the whip listens. The whip watches. The whip knows your name, even if no one else does. And that is why you sleep with your arms wrapped around your middle, as if you could hide your spine. As if your dreams weren't set already flinching. Sleep now. The stones are still. The lash is resting. But don't get comfortable. The castle remembers how you walk. And the whip never forgets. The chapel is always colder than the halls. Even in summer, even when the cook swears the sun's burned the roof tiles dry, even when the sweat won't stop clinging behind your knees, the chapel stays cold. It holds the chill in its stones like memory, like guilt, like something buried too deep to rot. You kneel at the back. Always at the back. There's no candle for you, no cushion, no carved name on the bench, only splinters, dust. The faint trace of someone else's blood, scrubbed half-heartedly by someone who probably prayed not to be noticed. You don't step bow for God. You bow for survival. You don't really know what the priest says. His voice rises and falls like a river you've never swum in, distant and beautiful and full of things that could drown you. Sometimes Latin, sometimes murmured French, sometimes nothing at all. But always watched. You never forget that part. God may be watching, but so is the Lord, so are the guards, so is the priest himself hidden behind incense smoke and ritual, his gaze sharp and human. You keep your head down. You mouth the words you've learned from repetition, not belief. The others do the same. A whole row of bent backs, some older, some younger, none of them whole. The boy beside you coughs into his hands. The sound echoes too loudly in the stone vault. No one turns. But you hear the priest pause. Just for a moment. You all freeze like rats in torchlight. Then he continues. The boy breathes softer after that. You don't know if it stems from fear or prayer. The prayers are always the same, begging for mercy, for forgiveness, for rain, for dry bread, for safety from lords, from wolves, from women who bleed too long in childbirth, from boils that don't go away, from the devil who's said to live in wine or mirrors or idle thoughts. You once prayed for your mother. And when she died anyway, you prayed for the strength not to hate the God who did nothing. Now you just stay quiet. And let the others do the believing for you. There is a crucifix above the altar, the figure of Christ carved in rough wood, not fine marble. His eyes are closed, his ribs too defined, his feet too small. You wonder what he would think of this place. If he would recognize the taste of hunger, If he would understand why the girl in front of you keeps her hands clenched so tightly during Mass, as if God will mistake her for someone worth saving if she pretends hard enough. You kneel for an hour. Then 2. You don't know how long. Time doesn't pass here, it waits. Your knees burn, then numb, then burn again. The stone beneath them is slick with cold, as if the floor itself is sweating. You've seen one of the kitchen boys collapse during Mass. His legs gave out. He hit the floor sideways and didn't wake for nearly a minute. They said it was demons. You knew it was hunger, but you didn't say so. No one did. When the prayers end, you do not rise. Not until the noble family has passed. Not until the priest's robe has swept the last step. Not until the candle nearest the altar has burned a full inch lower. Then, and only then, do you move. You stand slowly, pretending your legs don't tremble. You walk backward out of the chapel. You do not turn your back on the altar, even though it has never turned to face you. Outside, the air smells of pigs and ash. It sets a better smell than incense. You breathe deeply. Your knees still ache. They'll bruise purple and yellow by morning. You will not wrap them. You will not complain. You will not even limp. Because the chapel is where you learn silence. Not from reverence, from repetition. From ritual, from the understanding that suffering is sacred only when it is unseen. That pain does not absolve, it qualifies. It earns you a seat you never allowed to use. You saw the priest's hands once. Soft, puffed, no scars. He eats separately. He sleeps in a bed. He reads. He tells others how to confess, but he never weeps. You think maybe God listens to him. You think maybe that's why you kneel. Not to speak, but to be near someone God might accidentally hear. Still, you whisper a single word before you leave. You're not even sure it counts, but it stays on your lips like the taste of salt. Please. You don't know what you asking for, but your knees are bleeding. And maybe, just maybe, that's enough. Sleep now. The prayers are over. And though no miracle came, at least the stone was listening. The torches go out one by one. You don't see who puts them out. Maybe no one does. Maybe the castle just knows when to go quiet, when to let the shadows stretch a little further, lean in a little closer, and carry away whatever noise the day forgot to swallow. You lie where you always lie. No one moves you. No one tucks you in. Your blanket is thin. Your body is thinner. You've stopped counting the bruises, the aches that don't change, the days that never arrive. You forget how long you've lived like this, or if you've ever lived any other way. Above you, stone arches sigh in their sleep. The wind finds a crack in the wall and hums gently, a lullaby for the things no one remembers. You stir not cold now. You stir not warm either. You just are. You once had dreams, you think, or maybe they were someone else's. Maybe you borrowed them from a face you passed on the stairs, a face that vanished the next day like steam rising from the cookpot. No one says goodbye in a castle. They just stop appearing. And the work goes on. You reach for nothing. There is nothing to reach for. You let your arms rest at your sides. You let the aches settle. You let the silence press down, but not cruelly. Not like the day does. The night holds you softer, like it almost understands. Tomorrow, the bell will ring again. The same footsteps. The same mud. The same whisper of a whip. The same cough in the corridor. The same name never spoken. The same prayer mouthed silently in the chapel corner, hoping not to be seen. But that is not your concern now, because this is the part of the story where the walls no longer matter, where the castle forgets your footsteps, where the stone unlearns your weight, where you dissolve, not with fear but with relief. No one remembers your name, but that's okay. There are no wolves at the door, no cold in your bones. You have survived another day, and the castle, for all its stone and silence, lets you go. Sleep now. Truly, nothing will wake you tonight. Not even the dreams.